Are you ready?
Mhm. Hey, Village, and welcome to Red Lipstick Conversations. This is the space where we unapologetically explore with boldness, tapping into passion as we seek to inspire and create. I'm your host, Tasha Ray. I want to ground this episode by beginning with this quote. Realizing deeply that the present moment is all you ever have, make the now the primary focus of your life. Eckhart Tolle. Today, I invite you to explore the magic of now with me. That being said, I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your day to tune into this episode. Your support is the heart that keeps this podcast going. So, whether you are on a walk, commuting, or maybe just catching your breath in between responsibilities, I invite you to pause. Take a moment to breathe in deeply, then exhale slowly. Go ahead and actually try it. Push through all those things you're currently worrying about and doing, and just allow yourself to be in this current moment. Then ask yourself, how do you really feel right now? Realizing how you'd like to feel while also allowing the reality of this present moment to sink in. So often we get bogged down in the events of yesterday, last week, or even last year that somehow the present seems to escape us. If you've ever felt like this, you are not alone by a long shot. A recent study published in Frontiers in Psychology in April 2025 examined how focusing on the past versus the present affects emotional and cognitive responses in college students. Students who predominantly focused on past experiences exhibited higher levels of emotional reactivity. That is to say, there is a strong connection between focusing on the past and operating from a state of reaction versus proactive thought was undeniable. Conversely, students with a present-oriented focus demonstrated better self-control and overall awareness. Interesting, right? Being present isn't just about attempting to be zen. It's literally about choosing your power over autopilot. Daniel Goleman, in his book Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, wrote this. There is perhaps no psychological skill more fundamental than resisting impulse. It is the root of all emotional self-control, since all emotions, by their very nature, lead one to or another impulse to act. The root meaning of the word emotion, remember, is to move. The ability to control impulse is the base of will and character. By the same token, the root of altruism lies in empathy, the ability to read emotions in others. Lacking a sense of another's need or despair, there is no caring. Here, the author challenges the reader to be aware of the impact of unchecked emotional impulses and how that can have an effect on personal development, self-control, and ultimately one's character. One of my biggest takeaways from this book, Emotional Intelligence, is that while living with intention is the goal, this doesn't mean that we are simply dragged from one impulse to the next. Another way to look at it is when we are living in the present, we are able to recognize our triggers, grounded enough to pause before reacting, and wise enough to choose the response that aligns with our highest self. Because let's be real, life will always give us something to react to. But the question then becomes, will we surrender to every emotional wave? Or will we learn to anchor ourselves in the stillness of now? Tapping into the magic of the present moment isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it write your next chapter. It's about not passively being dragged along by each trigger on what can feel like an emotional minefield depending on the day. It's about reclaiming your authority, your voice, and your vision, minute by minute, breath by breath. When you're present, you get to respond instead of react. You get to create instead of conform. And you get to feel deeply without being ruled by every passing emotion. We stop living like we're just being pushed from point to point by life and instead become the drivers of our destiny. So, as we continue to move through today's episode, I want you to reflect on this. Where in your life are you being pulled by old narratives? And what would it look like to live in this moment? Now, let's dig a little deeper. Because the present moment is not just a pause between what was and what's next. It is the canvas on which our future is being painted. The takeaway here is to realize we are actually holding the brush. That means we are in control. Not every single little thing that happens in and around our lives. Not our past mistakes or anything else outside of what we choose to bring forth. That's huge when you really think about it, especially in light of all the clutter we often allow to smudge the masterpiece that our lives each has the potential to be. See, the present moment is the only space where change can happen. It's the only place where healing can truly begin. Now is the sweet spot where action is possible. When we are present, we reclaim choice. We get to say, no, I will not drag yesterday's disappointments into today's grace. We get to say, I don't have to be perfect tomorrow to be worthy of peace today. We get to say, this moment right here is mine, and I choose to live it fully. What I hope you can agree with me is that there is power in right now. Think about it. Everything you've ever done, every decision, right or wrong, every lesson happened in a current moment at that time. The future is a concept. The past is a memory. But the present, it's real, it's tangible, and it's where our power lies. When we bring our minds and bodies into alignment with the present, we become less reactive, more compassionate, and more in tune with our intuition and surroundings. We make better decisions. We speak with intention instead of defense. This is what it means to live in our truth. Rachel Marie Martin put it this way: live your truth boldly. Others may decide to think less of you, but it isn't your job to prove worth. It's your job to live knowing your worth can never be defined by another's assumptions. Hold your head high. Be proud. Carry on. A powerful message, right? So I want to encourage you, next time you find yourself being triggered, overwhelmed, or just off, try not to just let the feeling fully take you over. Instead, get curious. Allow yourself to ask the question, where is this coming from? And is this about now? Or is this something old I haven't yet dealt with? Do I still need to get healing in this particular part of my life? Because unexamined emotions don't disappear. They disguise themselves. And then eventually they will show up, invited or not. Brene Brown wrote in her book, Atlas of the Heart, emotions are not good or bad. They are data. They tell us what's happening in our environment and whether or not we are aligned with our values. The more fluent we are in our understanding and naming our emotions, the better we can move through them with clarity and compassion. Avoiding emotions doesn't protect us. It limits us. Emotional literacy is a key to wholehearted living. This is why it is important to distinguish between emotional presence versus emotional reactivity. Being emotionally present doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you feel with awareness. There's a big difference between being in your feelings and being aware of your feelings. And I'm sure the more lived experience you get, the clearer that becomes. One leads you to spirals potentially, and the other leads you to clarity. When you take time to pause and assess your internal state, you give yourself permission to choose how you'll move. And that is emotional intelligence in action. The thing is, we will miss the mark, and that's part of the journey. The thing about this work is that oftentimes we might feel that we have mastered a particular emotion. But here's the thing. Mastering emotions is often misunderstood. We are not ignoring our feelings, but rather we are choosing how we react. And that's where the real power is. And if you are someone who has ever been labeled too sensitive, let me offer you this. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It's information. But unexamined sensitivity can turn into reactivity, and that's where damage can often occur. Being numb isn't ever the goal, but neither is hypersensitivity. It's all about balance and becoming more and more aware of the triggers that impact our emotional states. I can tell you from my personal experience, until you are tested and in the thick of it, you will not truly know how you're progressing. That is the nature of this. This is why being in tune to yourself and your emotional state as you go throughout your day and throughout your week is important. The work is being present and intentional. The truth is, being present isn't always a bed of roses, but the alternative is far worse. Awareness brings the possibility of change. This is when the hard work of taking responsibility for our actions kicks in. Now, let's get into how we can jumpstart living in the now. A good place to begin is to cleanse the palate of whatever it is that is keeping you stuck. Just make the decision right now to let whatever it is go, even if it is only for a moment. Then check in with yourself. How do you feel? I bet it's lighter. Another technique is to try to ground yourself in the current moment is breath work. You might be resistant to trying anything that resembles meditation. And if that is you, that is okay. I'm not suggesting that you start with a huge chunk of time or that you close yourself off in the darkness for hours on end. My ask is you choose a time to take a few cleansing breaths and then check in with yourself. And if you feel better, then that is a practice you might want to keep doing and building on so you can tap into it when you need to. The idea here isn't to become a meditation master, but the goal is to find ways you can bring yourself to begin to master yourself. And if that means a few deep breaths along the way, is the thing that gets your journey started, that means you are further than you were a moment ago. The gift you are giving yourself is progress. Sometimes progress can look like a starting place you might not have previously considered. It can look like trying something new or trying something that you wouldn't even think to try. If you find yourself thinking, well, that would never work for me, my challenge to you is to consider most things don't work for anyone when they first try, myself included, even if you happen to be genuinely good at most things. Getting to truly understand yourself is work. But with time and patience, you might be surprised what can actually begin to have a positive impact in your life. Another practice that I found to be useful is taking a body scan. If you don't know what that means, this is when I check in with myself to see how do I feel in certain areas of my body, allowing myself to start from my head all the way down to my toes. For example, if you are feeling tension in your head and neck, being aware of this then might lead you to stretch, drink water, which might minimize some of your discomfort. You see, being aware and present can immediately lead to focused actions, and that is the goal. To not just become aware, but to then be able to use that information to shift and to change. Now, when I first began doing body scans, I seemed to only focus on when something hurt. But as time goes on, you will also start to become aware of what minimizes your pain, or even what makes you not only feel better, but feel good. If deep breathing and body scans aren't your thing, you might consider trying to ask yourself grounding questions. How do I feel? I know I've said it a couple times, but how do we truly feel, and when do we take time to really check in with ourselves? Then, before you start to try to self-adjust, choose to just sit in the moment and acknowledge the truth. This doesn't need to be a long process, especially at first. The idea is to do something that gets you to snap out of autopilot, so you can begin to see what being in the moment actually feels like. The thing about being present is you often don't realize how much time you spend being trapped in a cycle until you become aware. That is why self-awareness and being intentional is so key to this journey. If we are honest, we often spend so much of our lives trying to either fix the past or prepare for the future that we lose sight of the fact that life is happening right now. And no, it is not always perfect. Sometimes it's messy. Oftentimes it is inconvenient. And even still, many times it is uncertain. But it is real. and it's yours. There is a huge treasure in realizing that what is for you, including this moment. You don't have to chase what already belongs to you. You don't have to become something more tomorrow to be valuable today. Your power is in your presence, your uniqueness, and in your story. Nobody lives your experience the way that you have. That is something that we each have unique to ourselves. Your clarity is your stillness. And your healing, it starts the moment you choose to take hold of right now. So, as we bring this episode to a close, I want you to think about this affirmation this weekend. I am grounded in the now. I trust myself in this moment. I do not need to be anywhere else but here. I give myself permission to dream for more while giving myself grace for the moments I don't measure up. It is with this understanding that I will keep reaching, striving, and learning. Hopefully, this episode is a starting point for you, or can be for someone you care about. After all, this space is for us, and I am so grateful that you choose to be a part of my village. Please consider showing your support by connecting with me on social media or LinkedIn, and especially by leaving a comment. Again, thank you for choosing to explore the magic of now on this episode of Red Lipstick Conversations. Until next time, keep wearing that red lipstick or that bold color. Remember, we are in this together, and we will get there one step at a time. I'm your host, Tasha. Bye-bye.